villainous crimes we give life to. If these Queensbridge kids don't like you.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another video. Had to take a little one-day break because I was taking some finals, but let's get back with the NFC West draft grades. And let's start off here. Get up here. All right. So we're going to start with the Cardinals, and this whole division was extremely eventful, so let's get to it. Obviously, the Cardinals started off with the third pick, then moved down to 12, then moved back up to 6, if I'm not mistaken, to get their guy, Paris Johnson Jr. Now, look. I like this pick. Some people are like, oh, take Jalen Carter at 6, but if you have a tackle, a potential franchise left tackle, and you think he's the guy, you got to take him. And I can't fault that pick. I gave it a B plus. Do I think Jalen Carter is probably the better player? Yeah, but do I think Paris Johnson's going to be a franchise left tackle for the Cardinals? Yeah. So I have to give credit where it's due with that pick. Next up, we had them taking B.J. Ojulari at 41, another very good pick. I mean, this is around the range I've seen for B.J. Ojulari, but for them to get, I mean, they lost J.J. Watt, they lost Zach Allen, Chandler Jones the year before. They are in some desperate need for pass rushers. And to have B.J. Ojulari just sitting there at 41, this was their best pick. I gave it an A because you need pass rush and you fill it with one of the best players available. So, I can't fault that whatsoever. Next up, we got Garrett Williams out of Syracuse. They were in need of corner. They lost what was it, Byron Murphy, if I'm not mistaken. So Garrett Williams out of Syracuse, I think he fell a little bit. I remember seeing him a lot in the second round. So for him to fall to you at 72, and I'm not sure how big of a role he's going to play day one, but I mean, that's a good player at a position of need. So an A minus, this hurts as a Seahawks fan, to give the Cardinals all these good grades, but I mean, you can't really fault any of these first three picks. Now, Michael Wilson at 94. Yeah, they needed some help at interior defensive line. I don't really know if receiver was the right move here, I don't, dislike the player, Michael Wilson. I think 94, hey, that's a fair spot for him. But I mean, I don't think it was a big need, and I don't really think that, this was the best pick for the Cardinals. I gave it a B minus because, it didn't really sit right with me. Next up, though, John Gaines, the second out of UCLA. This is a good one. This is a guy who has some versatility, could come in, maybe not a day one starter, but he's going to provide some much needed depth and possibly even, earn that starting role moving forward. So I gave that a B plus for sure. Clayton Tune. Look, if you've watched my first three videos, you know how I feel about drafting quarterbacks. I don't see the purpose of it. I think it's a wasted pick every time. However, this is an interesting situation because obviously Kyler is going to miss who knows how much this season from his ACL tear, I believe it was, he suffered last season. So Clayton Tune actually does have the opportunity to come in and possibly win that starting job and actually, be a productive quarterback for them for the first several weeks of the season. So I still think it's the worst pick for them, but it is not as low, if you notice, as I've graded the other quarterback picks in these later rounds because he actually does have the opportunity to come in and play a role for them. So I gave that a C plus. Owen Pappoe out of Auburn, it wouldn't be a Cardinals draft if they didn't draft an athletic ass linebacker. That's what Owen Pappoe is. I think he ran like a 4.39 40 or something like that as a linebacker. They did not pick up Isaiah Simmons, fifth-year option, I believe. So potentially a replacement for Simmons. I don't know how much of a role he's going to play next year, but taking a shot on an athletic freak, I gave that a B minus. Next up was their best pick, in my opinion. I already mentioned how they need cornerback and Kytrell Clark. I'm not sure why he was available at 180. Maybe it's something we're not made aware of yet, an injury or something like that, but this was not a guy that should have been available at 180. He could come in and possibly be, an impact player for them right away. So I had to give it an A minus. I think that was their steal of this class. And then next up, Dante Stills. They got their defensive tackle. Is he gonna, come in and be a starter for them? I doubt it. But they addressed one of their biggest needs, which was defensive tackle. So I gave that a B just off principle. And this is how it shakes up. If you're new to these videos, there is actually math behind these grades. We put it into the calculator and it spits out a 5.78, which I have discretion to round up to a B plus or keep it at a B. I decided to round up, you know, to a B plus because I do think that they typically made, great picks overall. It was a very good draft, very strong class for the Cardinals, and I didn't think that at first. I wasn't really paying attention to the draft, and when I took the time to look over it, one of the better drafts I've seen so far. So shout out to the Cardinals. Next up, the 49ers. They did not have a first or second round pick, I think. So this is going to be very interesting. And their draft was very interesting. Oh, doesn't have his last name. It's Jair Brown, I believe, out of Penn State. Um, it's important. Context is very important, and the situation of all these teams are very because that's going to affect the grades, right? Jair Brown, he is a very good player, and I see a lot of the comments in the Browns fan or the Niners fan pages are saying that he is going to take over for Gibson next season. So, this is a pick. I gave it a B minus now because it's important to understand that the Niners are a team that's trying to compete for a Super Bowl, right? So drafting a guy who's not going to play much next season is not very good in my opinion. However, this pick, if he does take over for Gibson next season and he is a very good player, this is obviously a pick that has potential to grow much more than what it currently is. So context is important. Right now it's a B minus, but it could grow much, much higher. And then we got Jake Moody at 99. I believe this was still a third round kicker. Look, you may expect me, with how I feel about quarterbacks, to not really value the kicker picks as much, but I disagree. Jake Moody is an amazing kicker, possibly the best college kicker I've ever seen, right? So, and kickers won games, man. Kickers, where would the Ravens be these last several years without Justin Tucker? Obviously, not comparing Jake Moody to Justin Tucker, but if you got a guy like that who's knocked down and clutch, it's invaluable and it's worth way more than the 99th pick. So I have no problem with it. I gave it a B plus. Could they have drafted somebody somewhere else to provide much needed depth and actually help them at other spots? Yeah, but Jake Moody may be the most productive player at this whole draft class for him. So it's important to recognize and understand that. Now, next up, Cameron Latu. This is their worst pick, man. The fans didn't understand it. I don't understand it. Tight end was not a need for them at all. I don't think Cameron Latu is a top end prospect. I'll say it like that. Yeah, I don't get it. I don't love it. Yeah, I don't think he was the best player available. I don't think tight end was a position of need. So all around, I can't really justify this pick. It gets a D in my eyes. Darrell Luther Jr., cornerback was a need. They filled it with a guy, small school guy. The fans, they weren't really happy. I mean, they were happy that they addressed a need, but maybe not the prospect. It's to be determined. Is he going to be a special teams guy day one? Most likely. Could he eventually work his way into the lineup? Absolutely. So I gave it a B minus. Robert Beal Jr. This is a lot different. This is a lot different. They lost several players of that front seven, and these next two picks, I'll talk about them together. Robert Beal and D. Winters. Robert Beal lit up the combine, as every Georgia player does, and D. Winters, I mean, just an amazing season. I think he's a little undersized. That's the reason he fell all the way to 216. But both these guys could possibly come in and fill roles right away on that defense because they lost several players to free agency. And I feel like Robert Beal and D. Winters can both come in and be rotational players on a very good defense. So I gave this an A minus and a B plus, with Robert Beal being their steal of the class. So yeah, I'm very happy. Well, I'm not very happy as a Seahawks fan, but Niners fans should be happy. Back to back very good picks by the Niners here. And then these next three, I'm not sure if any of these guys are going to make the roster. I feel like these are practice squad guys, so I'm not going to grade any of these three, just because, I'm not going to hold picks against them that may not make the roster. So the way it shapes out, we got 6 graded players, but they had 9 players drafted overall. You can see the breakdown there. Heavy on the defense with several pass catchers as well. So it shaped up to a 5.17. And I decided not to round up. I don't think it was spectacular, especially with them not having any picks in the first 2 rounds. How much are you really going to be able to do? So I gave it a B minus. The Cameron Latu pick is what's really holding this draft back, but they got potentially a franchise kicker, and over time, those defensive picks they made, Jair Brown, Robert Beal, D. Winters, we could see all 3 of those guys be valuable players on this defense moving forward. So I gave it a B minus. Next up, the Rams. They did not have a first round pick, but they had a second round, and they had fuck. I think they had like 14 picks. So let's get into it. Okay. First pick, Steve Avila, A minus. I think this was their best pick right off the bat. I wanted my Seahawks to get him. I think Steve Avila had a case as the best interior offensive lineman in the whole class, and we know how much the Rams' offensive line struggled last season. So to get a guy like that just sitting there at 36, this was a great pick. They should be very happy with that selection because they could play some immediate impact for them this upcoming season. Next up, Byron Young out of Tennessee. This is an athletic guy, arguably the best player from that Tennessee defense last season. I'm not sure how he fell to 77. I mean, I thought he was better than the scouts thought he was, so I like the fact that the Rams gave him a shot here in the third round, I believe. So I gave that one a B plus. They lost Leonard Floyd, for example. Maybe Byron Young can come in and fill those shoes. So I gave it a B plus. Next up, Kobe Turner. You know, defensive tackle. I don't know because I don't know how long Aaron Donald's going to play, right? If he's gone after this season, then maybe this is a B minus or a B. But if he plays another, 2 years to fill out that contract or whatever, how much of a role does Kobe Turner play? I'm not really sure, so I gave it a C plus. And then Stetson Bennett, I gave it a C. You know how I feel about these quarterback picks, but I just I think 128 is a bit of a reach. I'll be honest for Stetson. If this would have been 140, 158, then maybe that's a different story. I think you could have got a guy with this pick who makes a day one impact for you. I'm not sure if Stetson is going to win this job. So in the future, we may look back at as a waste of the 128th pick. But who knows? Stetson was a magical man in college. Maybe he can make something happen with the Rams. Nick Hampton from App State, outside linebacker. They're just throwing darts at the defensive line, pass rushers, and I like that. Doubling down when you have other needs, though, I'm not sure. They already drafted Byron Young. I would have liked to see them go another direction with this pick, but I still understand the aspect of trying to just fill your room with as many pass rushers as possible. So I gave this a C plus. Warren McClendon, though, I was not expecting him to be available this far down the draft. I'm not saying he's going to be a starting tackle for them right away, but much needed depth, and you never know. He has the physical profile. So I gave this a B plus because you're taking a shot on a guy who could potentially play a big role at tackle for you. So I like that pick a lot by the Rams. Davis Allen, we'll just talk about these next three picks. All three picks, I think, are guys who maybe were not thought of being available this late. I mean, Davis Allen at first, possibly the Tyler Higbee replacement long term. Um, a lot of pass catching upside. I think Sean McVay will love him. I gave that one a B. And then these next two picks, Paku Nakwa and Travius Hodges Tomlinson, both guys who should not have been available this far in the draft, both steals. I gave THT though the steal of the draft pick because I'm not sure how big, of a role Puka is gonna play day one, but I think Tomlinson, he will be a nickel corner for them day one. So I think this is a very good, set of picks for the Rams. I mean, look at those four in a row from McClendon to THT. Those were some good picks by the Rams. They should be very happy with those. Even these last, I mean, I think they rounded out pretty well. O'Shawn Mathis, another guy who, they've taken a lot of outside linebackers, a lot of pass rushers. So, and I think Mathis is the guy who at 189, that's good value. So they understand what their needs are, I'll say, for the Rams. So they took a guy who could help come in and potentially be a role player. So I like that one as well. Zach Evans, I did not expect him. It was such a deep running back class, but still, Zach Evans at 215, this is a very good pick. With Cam Akers, I'm not sure how much of a contract he has left. So Zach Evans could be a big, big player for the Rams next season and moving forward. And then they took a punter. They took a punter at 223. What am I supposed to give this? It's a good route. It's a good, pick value for a punter. Do I know anything about Ethan Evans? Absolutely not. It was tough to even find a picture for him, but I still gave it a B minus. And these next two, I'm not sure if they're going to make the roster, so I'm not going to give it a grade. A lot of fucking picks. You can see the distribution there. A lot in the front seven, couple DBs, couple O line. It rounded up to a 5.54, and I agree with that one. It was a B. For not having a first rounder, they overwhelmed the entire draft with their amount of picks they had, and I think they rounded up to a lot of players who are going to make impacts on the team. They let a lot of guys go, so they had a lot of holes to fill, but I think they did that fairly well. And then we got my Seahawks. I will admit my bias right away. So discredit this entire thing if you want, but I still want you to hear my opinion, what I think. First pick Devon Witherspoon. On draft day, I was very upset. I was very upset when we took Witherspoon because I did not think a corner was, there was a top 5 corner pick. You know what I'm saying? I don't think there was a corner in this draft valuable enough for number 5. And if there was, I wanted us to take Christian Gonzalez. I didn't even think Witherspoon was a possibility. So at first, I would have given this a C plus. Then I slept on it. I would have given it a B minus. Now, several days removed from the draft, I give it a B because I understand if Pete Carroll thinks Witherspoon was worth the 5th pick, he sees something that I do not see. So I have to roll with Pete here. But I still think it was our worst pick, which is saying a lot because for that to be our worst pick, you'll see what I think of our draft class. Jackson Smith-Njigba at 20. I did not think they would go this direction because we had so many other holes, but I love it. I love it because this adds a whole new dimension to our offense, and I feel very confident that he will be, with Geno Smith throwing to him and the weapons he has around him, I think he will look like the best wide receiver from this draft class for the first 2 or 3 seasons, just because of the situation he's going into. It's just, it's the perfect fit for Njigba. Let me put it, it's the perfect fit. I'm so happy. It's an A minus. I mean, it's not an A plus or an A because we could have gone other directions, which made wide receiver wasn't a hole. I'll be perfectly honest. We did not need a receiver, but we took arguably the best receiver with that pick, and I couldn't be happier. Derek Hall at 37. Was it a bit of a reach? That's what I've seen. However, it's a big need for us. D line and pass rush especially. I'm not mad at us taking a big guy there who, was pretty productive in the SEC. So was would I have took Derek Hall? No. Do I think he could come in and at worst be a good role player for us? Yes. So I gave it a B. Zach Charbonnet at 50. This one threw me for a loop. I love Zach Charbonnet. He was my number 3 running back in this class. I did not think we were going to take him at all, but I love it and I completely understand it. The whole league understands the durability of running backs and that you need multiple running backs. And Zach Charbonnet, if Kenneth Walker happens to go down, I could not feel happier that we got this guy sitting behind him ready to go in case of emergency. So I gave that a B plus. Anthony Bradford, this is where the Seahawks make their money. These late round picks, the Seahawks find their guys. Anthony Bradford out of LSU, he could be a day 1 starter for us. How is he available at 108? I don't know. He is going to start for us day 1. It was a great pick, A minus. Man, I'm so happy talking about these picks, man. Cameron Young, Mississippi State, defensive tackle, another big need. What do? We fill it with a good prospect. B plus. It's simple. It's simple. You need a position, draft a good guy for that position. This is how every team should think. Next up, we doubled down on defensive end with Mike Morris. Hey, I am pretty confident now that between Mike Morris and Derek Hall, one of these guys are going to come in, and both of these guys are probably going to be productive role players. So I like that pick as well. I gave it a B. I can't be mad at that pick whatsoever. Next up, Olu Oluwatimi. How is this guy available? This guy didn't give up a sack in college. It's an A. He's going to be our starting center. This is our best pick. I don't get it. Next up, Jarek Reed. This is the one. I didn't grade it because I'm pretty sure this guy's going to be a practice squad / special teams guy. We didn't need safety whatsoever. It was arguably our deepest position. I don't really get that one. I didn't grade it. You could say that's bias for me not grading it because I probably would have given this like a C or a C plus. But I just didn't grade it because I'm not sure how big of a role he's going to play. But Kenny McIntyre, guys, 230s. If you remember my running back video, I think this guy was my number 4 running back because he's the best receiving back in this whole class, bar none. Well, maybe Jahmyr Gibbs. He's one of the best receiving backs in this class. Big physical guy with not a lot of wear and tear on him in college either. I love it. It's the biggest steal possibly of any team to get a guy this talented at 237. I had to give it an A. I had to give it our steal of the class because he's going to come in and he's just so good. I don't get it. I don't get how he was available. If you look at the breakdown here, 3 defensive line, 2 DBs, 2 O-line, 2 running backs, a receiver. It's just every hole we need, we filled it, and we took some skill position players just because. if it rounded up to a 6.17, which technically should have been a B plus, but obviously I'm gonna round up. Who gives a fuck? I'm rounding up. Not to mention we had a pretty good undrafted free agent class, so there's some extra justification I threw in there with it. So I gave it a 6.17. I had to round up to an A minus. Look, the Seahawks class was widely regarded as one of the better ones. I think without a doubt it's the best in the NFC West, but don't sleep. The Cardinals also had a very good class, and the Rams and Niners both made do with what they had. So I think so far this might be the best, the best division as far as drafts go. If let me, for me to put it that way. That's gonna be it for this video, y'all. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new. I'm gonna have a lot of more of these videos coming out, so appreciate you. See you later.
It's out the motherfucking back.
Right out
But
the
niggas
ass.
don't know how to act.